Great. So glad to be here. Happy you could make it. My name is Tamara Ganor, and I am the Content Product Manager. I will talk about data excellence in this session. I'll present updates and what we've done so far by the content operations team in regard to metadata management and what are our future plans for making the most out of metadata. So feel free to post your questions and comments in the Q&A section. The session will be recorded. The link will be posted along with the presentation in the webinar section of the content page at the Online Health, the Community Knowledge Center. In this session, I'll go over a short recap of what was done in the Data Excellence Initiative so far and what the next stages for data excellence are. So for those of you who are not familiar with Data Excellence Initiative, it is a project that started in 2022, and it aimed at taking holistic measures to improve metadata aspects. The initiative included brainstorming sessions with multiple Ex Libris stakeholders who deal with metadata from various aspects. We had people from development, from support, from operations, from cataloging teams, and from a variety of product perspectives, so that knowledge bases and discovery stakeholders also could share their input and the feedback they received from librarians. And thanks to the Data Excellence Initiative, the content operations team zoomed in on several aspects of managing metadata and focused resources to improve these aspects. And once the initiative has run its course, some of these improvements have been completed and others were added to our day-to-day routine. Now, once the processes have either completed or assimilated in routine workflows, we took the initiative framework to review other aspects of metadata that we wanted to focus on, and that will be the second part of the session in which we will review what is next to come in terms of excellence in metadata management. So just an overview of the completed phase of Data Excellence Initiative. We focused on three aspects of metadata management, which we believed were the most impactful on your routine workflows. First, the quality of the metadata. Second, reducing the wait for updates and the third, linking improvements. In each of these categories, we could have taken a variety of actions, but we decided to focus on specific improvements to maximize the resources we have and to choose the ones that were most meaningful for librarians and their end users. Starting with quality of metadata, we chose the book collections which were most activated, and for these book collections that were in low quality, based on the quality score metrics, we found different ways to enrich their MARC records. For example, taking from print sources or through third-party copy cataloging services. Reducing the wait for updates, we sought out two actions. One was moving our update cycle to a new method called Direct Ingest or Alma Direct. This process allowed us to take the files providers send us for updates and have them in the Alma Community Zone within 1 day. This process is already available for over 40 million portfolios in the Community Zone, and we're planning to move more of the provider files updates to this process so that any change providers make will be reflected within a day in the Community Zone. The other one was reducing the lag of processing CDI rights. We currently are at 30 hours average of update cycle between ALMA activations and CDI results appearing. The last part is improving linking and developing different linking methods to better match the use case of the content and the linking parameters. And also moving providers to quick links, which allow access to the full text with one click only. And these links are now available for over 1.5 billion records in CDI. These paths have run their course, now are embedded in our routine workflows. So it is now time to examine how further can we explore our opportunities of bringing excellence to metadata management. Going forward, we chose these three paths to proceed with data excellence initiatives. We still have quality here. We did in the previous part, and now we still have it, because although we have focused in the past in improving the quality of the records we are adding to the knowledge bases, we can see there are other ways we can still make an impact, such as AI enrichment of bibliographic records, and modifying internal workflows, which is not quite part of the Data Excellence Initiative, but it's still a way for us to affect the quality of the knowledge bases and CDI. This modification is to work on what we bring into the community zone in the first place and analyze the quality of incoming updates and creation of new collections. New collections. The second path is working with content providers to better sync with their workflows. That is done with improving communication and increasing transparency. And the third is to focus on new collections with two main features, creating a pre-release indication for collections and automating the creation of new collections. So let's dive into these three opportunities we're developing in content operations. Starting with improving the quality of BIB records using AI. We already had a webinar on this in March, so feel free to get the more technical details and the rationale of the process by viewing the webinar. I'll share later today the links to the webinar recording page. So we're still working on the three fields, mark fields that we're enriching: the Library of Congress subject headings, the summary, and the language. The Library of Congress subject headings results by the AI are more broader terms. We're working on more options to get the subdivisions as well and get the more detailed subjects without compromising the accuracy. So another challenge is automating the process so that QA will also be more automated. Currently, we have manual QA processes as well as community feedback. Automating this will allow us to add more enriched records and work in bulk. By end of June, we expect to have a total of 500 ProQuest eBook Central records that will be enriched with AI. Well, it may be delayed a bit. We'll release it. We might have to release at the end of it through the beginning of July, but we are planning to reach the 500 mark by then. Planning to add more records, and we're looking into the process as a means of bulk enrichment, and eventually taking nonfiction book records to higher quality. We're also planning to add table of content to records that currently don't have it. So this is not generative AI. It's other tools that we're implementing and using them to extract this metadata. We don't need this for eBook Central records for now, but we will communicate our process once we have a definite timeline and the scope of the titles we're working on. And for those of you who haven't heard it yet, this is how it looks like. This is a record. We have the language, the abstract, the Library of Congress subject headings, and we also have a comment here of saying that the part of the metadata in this record was created by AI based on the text of this resource. And annotation, just this, okay. So you can see here we have generated by AI. Okay, wherever for the fields that were added, the AI, you can have this comment here. We still don't have it for the language, but we will add it shortly. So another way to improve the quality of the knowledge bases and CDI is to take new collections and major updates into consideration before we even add the new metadata into the knowledge bases and CDI. But there are two different flows that require our attention. The first is adding new collections, and this is currently being triggered either by librarians in Idea Exchange or by content providers. And after we carefully review the nature of the metadata, we can then decide whether the metadata in question could be represented properly or it needs to be worked on. These flows require a triage in which discovery representatives, people who work with the CDI, people who work with the content ingestion in the knowledge base, and the team members of provider relations meet together for a weekly meeting, and we discuss these requests and this metadata, because after we better understand where the request is coming from, and if we can accommodate it, we can decide what is the best way to represent the metadata. And we know that metadata richness affects retrieval, collection management, cataloging efforts. So we are taking measures to improve the records as best we can. And in this triage, we discuss how to handle brief records before we even add them to the knowledge bases and CDI. So the other flow that we do need to consider is major updates to existing collections. Although these updates are not considered as adding new metadata to the knowledge bases and CDI, they are adding new metadata for existing collections and packages. For small scale updates, there is not much of an impact. especially if it comes from providers that we already work with and they are familiar with metadata standards and they already send us metadata and they know what we are expecting. However, some of these updates include pouring in massive amount of metadata that in these cases, we do need to make sure that the metadata is standardized and we bring in quality records into existing collections. And these major additions will also be considered before being added to make sure that the update will not reduce the quality of the collection. If the records are brief, then we encourage the provider to find a way to enrich them and make them more robust. The next path of data excellence is the provider's flow. So this brings into focus our work with content providers which are our partners in the metadata management process. Our main topics to improve our workflows with providers are transparency and communication. And we're doing this by bringing the provider platform to their aid. That's an Alma-like environment that allows content providers to view their collections as customers see them in the community zone. We currently have 60 providers with access to the provider platform and 14 more in the pipeline. The feedback we receive from them is very enthusiastic. Providers are also asking for enhancements to this provider platform, meaning that they trust it and they see it as a meaningful tool to manage the metadata flow with Ex Libris. Noam Fassar, Director of Provider Relations, gave a session on this feature. It was also recorded. You can view it if you're interested in more details. I'll put the link in the chat. The next aspect of improving the provider's flow is our new channels of communication via Salesforce. Instead of communicating with the providers in a designated email account, now we're building a channel of communication through Salesforce, and that will allow better tracking, better ownership of provider accounts. It will also give us very powerful tools to analyze cases and communication with them, such as number of issues or trends of various problems, sorry. We can analyze if our issues are on a title level, a collection level, if it's linking issues or thresholds, and so on. These changes brought more actions on our side. First, creating a Basecamp project designated for content providers, and that gives them a platform to freely discuss metadata related issues. Although they're competitors, having a Basecamp project allows providers to discuss best practices and challenges of managing metadata for their content. This also enables Ex Libris to evaluate different workflows and aspects of managing metadata in the academic publishing ecosystem. This is the first time a vendor has created a channel for content providers to communicate between themselves and Ex Libris. This channel is very active, and we use it to answer general questions for provider platform questions or training information and send out other notifications. It can give providers some perspective on what is interesting and about priorities and allows them to discuss these issues with their peers. The Basecamp project also sparked some training sessions as it became clear that Ex Libris internal workflows as well as customer-facing processes need to be explained and visualized so that content providers can take an educated part of the process. These training sessions are being well accepted and content providers from around the world participate in them. Also, we're putting efforts into improving the documentation in the Community Knowledge Center, the online help section, which brings together documentation, information about best practices for providers, and can also track the known issues. These are totally transparent, communicated both to providers and customers. And in this manner, we're aligning the expectations and giving updates on our progress with various metadata related issues. This is just to show the feedback from content providers about the provider platform. They see it as a game changer. They find it helpful to discuss customer queries and address them quicker. It allows providers to view their content, to see what customers are using, and it also gives them a way to manage the collection information and be in direct communication with librarians without having to open cases with Ex Libris. So it definitely helps to collaborate and improve the customer experience, as you can see the responses here. And this is how the message board looks like for the Basecamp project. You can see there are many threads here, some by Ex Libris personnel, but others just content providers posting questions and having discussions, lively discussions, and looking into technical questions, and not only on Ex Libris products such as the overlap analysis tool, but also more general queries like why so many title discrepancies, which is a question that can be relevant for other instances, and having other providers communicate and sharing their experience really gives them, I think, the added value of having this this discussion in a more closed environment. So the last part of the second generation of data excellence is working with new collections. We realized from customer feedback, but also from analyzing our internal work, that new collections are a key component of what content operations does that can be improved. By improving that, we can make a major impact on your workflows and experience. Analyzing new collections patterns includes reviewing what time of year do we get new collection requests from librarians and from content providers. And we know that annual collections are a big part of having new collections added to the knowledge bases. But we also see that new collections requests, although peaking at the end and the beginning of every year, we have a steady stream of new collection requests trickling in a constant pace along the year. We're making this a capacity issue, as we need to consider allocating analysts to handle these requests from two teams: the operations team that ingests the metadata, and provider relations that handles the communication with the providers. So these two teams are handling these requests, but also other requests and projects, such as platform migrations or aligning providers, catalog, and so on. Another aspect is which providers send us new collection, and what is the pattern of these new collections they send us. Are they subject collections? Should they replace existing collections? When we receive these new collections, does it mean we need to delete other collections? And all kinds of patterns like this that we are analyzing, and we found out that it really helps us better understand and better plan for what to expect. And another aspect is the quality of the new collections, and what manual actions we need to take once we have a request for new collections to make sure that we have the quality additions to the knowledge bases and CDI. And last, what kind of mandatory data we need in order to create new collections, what of that mandatory data comes automatically from providers, and what we need to manually collect and confirm. These analysis was necessary for us to understand what kind of manual processes can be done automatically. Once we analyzed what kind of collections we're creating and found the patterns, we could then move towards automating creation of new collections. So the mandatory data that we need in order to create new collections, there's like the very basic key factors, such as the name of the collection or the description. I'm just mentioning here other data points that we need in order to create new collections. For example, if the collection is perpetual, and it doesn't always mean the same thing to providers as it does to librarians. The perpetual collection, from Ex Libris point of view, should mean that none of the titles should be removed from the collection. If the title list has a lower number of titles than there is in the collection, it means that we will not remove the titles that no longer appear in the title list. But sometimes these collections have reduced title lists because the provider is no longer offering some of these titles for sale. But does that mean that the titles that have been removed from the title list are not available for libraries that already purchased them? The fact that titles are not available for purchase right now doesn't necessarily mean that they should also be removed from the holdings of the libraries who purchased these titles in the past. Material type is also a very important aspect of configuring the collection. If it's a book title and all books have ISBNs, it will be a different way to configure the linking information. But if we have a mixed material collections that also include material type that does not have identifiers, we will need to configure the collection differently to allow matching the bibliographic record to the portfolios by a different unique ID rather than ISBN. The number of titles also affects the workflow, as it is a parameter for us to confirm after the load if the loading process managed to add all the necessary titles successfully. If we get a title count of 10,000 and the title list has 20,000 records because of duplicate records that appear multiple times in the title list, this indicates we need to review the title list with the provider and make sure that these duplicates can be removed because they are redundant. And another aspect of title count is planning our capacity. For example, we recently received a request from a provider to add 2 collections with over 300,000 titles each. These collections were not requested by any of the librarians in IdeaXchange, and it is in language that very few customers use. That kind of loading will take up bandwidth that will reduce the number of other collections that we can load and manage. And as we had other priorities requested from customers with higher activation potential, we have scheduled adding these 2 collections later in the year, so we can still be aligned with what the providers are offering to customers without delaying the more in-demand collections. And the last, the update frequency, is a factor that affects whether we will need to add a location on our secured servers for the providers to send regular updates, or is it a one-time load of a closed collection that we should not expect any updates. This can also serve as a flag raised if we should expect monthly updates and we're not receiving any updates for a long time. Then we can check with providers and proactively review if the update process has been impacted and if we need to really receive more updates than we are really actually getting. To make this process more efficient, we're adding the solution of the manifest, having a list of inventory of what the provider is offering for libraries with the relevant fields. For now, it is a pilot with few providers to serve as a means of tracking and monitoring changes as providers are changing the collections they're selling. Our plan is to have an addition of a line in the manifest Excel to generate a command that will create an operational ticket for our teams to review the details I mentioned before and to create the shell of the collection. This is how one of the files looks like. Building an automated process requires that all providers work the same, but as we know, this is not the case. So our development team worked to create a flexible mechanism to accommodate variations of this manifest. And with each scenario, the addition of a line will trigger a command in our internal ticketing system to create a collection. This will allow a more accurate alignment with what the providers have. It will reduce the waiting time for new collections, and it will free up capacity for our teams to manage backlog that we're currently handling. We already have several internal tickets that were created with this new workflow from Taylor and Francis and de Gruyter, and it means that all the steps in between are being nulled. Librarians notifying us in IdeaXchange. I pick it up and check if we already have it. A provider relations team analyst reach out to the provider. Provider generates a file location and title list. So all these steps have been reduced just to the last one. Provider creating a title list, uploading it to a designated location, and adding the line in the Excel file. This new workflow is also encouraged by the content providers that participate in this pilot. It allows the new collections creation to be organically integrated with their ongoing existing workflows. But we can take it a step further on the automation flow and create the shell of the collection, the envelope of the collection, based on the information provided in the manifest to accommodate expected collections as well. And that will actually trigger the next step, which is the pre-release collection. When we already have the operational ticket to create the collection, doesn't necessarily mean that the title list has passed all the necessary QAs. But the envelope is confirmed and the collection can be created. So this interim step will create a collection labeled pre-release, and it will be visible in the CZ, but it will not be available for activation. Once the collection is seen in the CZ, you will know we already received enough information to create the shell or the envelope of the collection. The titles that are associated with this collection will be added once they have passed the QA of linking or thresholds, duplications, identifiers, and other requirements for adding portfolios. These collections will not be available for activation. Once we add the titles, it will be available and published in the release notes. So the ideal scenario here is that between the creation of a pre-release collection and the addition of portfolios, that will be less than a day. But in case title list does not pass the QA, this pre-release collection will appear as a selective or aggregator package without portfolios, and it will be pending the title list passing the QA. And in the meantime, collections will be announced in a new pre-release section in the release notes. And once they're populated, they will be added to the new collections release notes. Having this visibility allows you to track the collections in the various stages of creation. Also knowing we're already handling the addition of this new collection and that we have at least the basic information to create the envelope. So circling back to the provider platform, providers will be able to see the status of their new collections and communicate it back to you. And having this end-to-end process, the manifest, adding a line to the manifest, that line creates a pre-release collection. The providers then can see in their provider platform what is the status. This actually is a holistic approach to find ways to automate this process of creating new collection. And we expect it to reduce librarians' effort. When providers can see a collection is missing in the provider's platform, they can trigger the addition in an automated way by adding it to the manifest, and that is quicker and more efficient. So to summarize, Data Excellence Initiative enabled the Xlibris to bring valued feedback from various stakeholders and search for creative solutions that are not already part of the product, but are developing the ability of the product to better accommodate needs and the desired outcomes. So the quality, starting with quality, which is always a goal for us. And although we rely on metadata coming from content providers, we know the improving the quality will build more trust and increase the usage of the CZ. We want to see you happy with what you find in the CZ. We want to see more activations of CZ collections and portfolios and BIP records. And the way to do it is to make it worth your while to use the CZ, knowing that it is as good as what you can do locally, or at least good enough and is worth reducing any local efforts on your end. So working together with content providers and librarians is building a valuable partnership that brings our strength and advantages forward. And the feedback is the foundations for our next plans. And last, looking for ways to increase efficiency by saving time and reducing efforts for all parties involved. Increasing efficiency has a great effect on many aspects, from reducing emails and reducing meetings and cases and regressions and fixes, and all these can be impacted once the tools we develop fulfill their purpose. And speaking of training, expanding the discussion on metadata, you're all invited to participate in the next Provider Relations webinar, Behind the Scenes of Content Delivery. This will take place on July 24th. So keep an eye open for the registration link in the content list. And in this webinar, you can hear Magali Vascones from Gale, together with our Provider Relations Director, Norm Fass, and our Provider Relations Analyst, Ben Johnson. They will present various aspects of the supply chain of metadata, technical standards, and upcoming enhancements to KBARTS. And let me just, here are the links. Let me just post them in the chat along with my email address, and feel free to reach out directly to me for any follow-up questions. And see that we have several questions in the chat. Okay. Great. So I'll just stop sharing so I'll have better visibility of the questions in the chat. When will the enhancement by AI be implemented? Will there be a way for libraries to opt out? Right, so already the enriched records with AI are already available in the community zone. We have 200 records that have already been released, and you can opt out and using a normalization rule to exclude that field, the $7 field of everything that was enhanced with AI. But you know, you might be interested in reviewing them and thinking if this could be of value, because what it does, it just takes already existing records from eBook Central, and based on the full text, it populates these fields and creates these just these three fields: the language, the summary, and the Library of Congress subject headings. So they're not the subject headings, they're not wrong. They could be just broad, but this could also be a better starting point for cataloging staff, just to add them more metadata to them. Where can we find a list of providers involved in this new venture? I'm assuming this is about the manifest. So we currently have four providers that are already working with the manifest. It's Taylor and Francis and De Gruyter, Bloomsbury, and Sage. But I don't think we have a knowledge article for that yet, but I can check. Why can't pre-release collections be activated? This would be one less thing for library staff to track if we could activate it, and then portfolios are automatically activated. Right. Okay. So the question is, for one scenario, it would be better to have a pre-release collection activated. But if you think about the whole activation process, then you need to, you have this wizard that you need to choose your actions. If you want to upload the portfolios, and select the portfolios by a file, or you want to manually select them, or you want to auto-activate them. So having this in advance is currently, it's not technically available. That's why only after it's populated with the portfolios you can make these selections. And it might be better because then you actually see how many portfolios are in the collection, and if it's really if it suits what you're looking for. Okay, clarify about provider relations and Salesforce. Is it support to support or a new initiative? This is a new initiative. The support to support option or initiative for content operations team is having the support analysts that reach out directly to support teams at the providers. That I'm guessing that all the providers also have their own support teams that they answer queries and they use cases. So the communication with support to support is between our support analyst and the content provider's support analyst. But working with Salesforce is this new initiative is different with that. Our provider relations analysts, which are, some of them are librarians, and they do like the whole detective part of understanding and analyzing collections. Sorry, my dog is joining the session. Sorry. So this is a different kind of communication. If providers would wanted to contact us to add new collections, they wouldn't do it with their support teams. They would do it with their discovery managers or metadata specialists. So it's a different type of communication, and it's not going to happen through the designated mailbox. It's going to be through Salesforce. So besides ProQuest Books, other providers are planning to enrich using AI. does Ex Libris need to get permission from providers first? Yes, we need to get permissions from providers first because our communication, what we do with these records for enriching, we need the full text. So we need the full text permissions. Currently, we have it only for ProQuest books. We're in communication and discussions with other providers. Obviously, it needs to go through the legal departments on both sides and get this approval. So for now, we have several providers in the pipeline, but nothing definite for that. The table of contents is a bit different because it's doesn't require AI, and we're not going to use the full text, so it's not exactly for the same purposes. Lately, I've encountered issues with incorrectly merged bib records. In these cases, one bib record actually contained metadata from two different titles. What is being done to prevent this? Well, why does it happen? It happens for various reasons. Because we have the bibliographic records built from several metadata feeds, then it could be just a simple error that one provider sends us a feed with an identifier with a wrong identifier, and then it could merge. This could also happen from metadata that has several additions identifiers within the feed, and then they will merge. But so there are different reasons for that. The way for us to overcome these occurrences is to improve the rules that we use when we ingest the content, and we constantly tweak them, we constantly change them. The thing is to find the pattern, to understand why it happens and when it happens in bulk, and then we go back to our ingestion rules and we just tweak them and change them. If you have any specific examples, then please reach out to me directly, and I'll see if it's already being addressed on some level. And if not, then I'll just open a new ticket with our development team and analyze these examples. How will quality control of AI enrichment be automated? So that's a good question, and that's actually what we're looking into. We're taking feedback from librarians, we're taking feedback from our internal team, and we see what exactly is causing the AI enriched results to be declined or to be reprocessed. And we don't have a good answer for that yet, but we know that once we automate this process, it will make everything much quicker, and it will allow us to move forward in bulk. So for now, no answer, but we have a team of very smart people that are working and looking for ways to do that. Well, maybe libraries can pre-activate shell collections and then get push notifications once they're ready for full activation via the wizard. Right, so this is part of this development. We actually have another feature to develop for like subscribing to a pre-released collection. It's not released yet because we had some issues with that, but we are working to analyze how we can enable subscribing to these pre-released collections, and then you'll get a push notification that this collection has been populated, and you can activate it because it has now all the portfolios and it's available for activation. So I think I answered all the questions. Okay. Great. So thank you very much for joining, and happy to hear your feedback, and your questions were really great. This will be, of course, posted in the content section on the webinars, and also once this I'm closing this session, then you'll have a short survey. I'll appreciate if you take the time to fill it out. Always happy to hear what you think. You have my email. Feel free to reach out directly to me, and I'll see you in the next webinar. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.